So a man peeked into the entrance of the medical outreach clinic. Imagine a door opening and his head peeking in. And he said, "Can someone help me?" The nurses were all taking care of other patients. I happened to be in the waiting room, as I often find myself on Wednesday afternoons, with a little sign that says free prayer, and wearing a collar and jeans to be a little more approachable. And so I got up and went to the door to find out what the gentleman needed. When I got to the door in the hallway where the stairway is, I found the man sitting on the steps without a shirt on. And I asked him, what do you need? What can I do?" And he said, "I need a shirt." It's pretty obvious. And I could tell he needed way more than a shirt as well. So I went back in. I said, "Just sit right there." I went back in. I went back to the where the nurses were and interrupted and said, there's a guy on the step who's saying he needs a shirt, but he needs a whole lot more. Could you please come with me?" And so we went back out. And the nurses quickly assessed that this man was overdosing on a drug. Things were starting to shut down. This is why he was sitting and couldn't stand anymore. He had been Narcaned a couple of times. He was in and out of consciousness. It's a miracle that he got to the clinic at all. Over the course of the next hour, the nurses worked with him. He wanted help, but he didn't. It's really the situation. They ended up calling the ambulance. The medics arrived, and because it was far more than what we could do at the clinic, he really needed to go to the hospital. So the medics arrive, and they wanted to take him to the hospital, but in the times that he was awake and conscious, he said no, he did not want to go. He had his reasons. He did not want to go to the hospital. So the medics, their policy is that unless the person gives permission or they're unconscious, then they can't take somebody. So they worked with him until he finally decided, "I'm not going." They said, "We can't let you go until you get up on your own without our help and walk out the door." And after about 15 more minutes, that's what he did. He walked out the door. Very odd situation. He was obviously in trouble. The signs of overdose were all over the place. He spoke, he talked, he was in and out of consciousness. We offered help, but he said no and walked away. The question is, what makes a person refuse help when they're so desperate and it's right there in front of them? Why would that happen when somebody is so obviously in need of help? I think part of this has to do with overdosing has more to do. There's multiple different ways that people can overdose, and it's not just drugs. I think we're full of a society that overdoses on all sorts of stuff all the time. We overdose on money, always needing more, never feeling secure, full of anxiety about our future. We overdose on work. Our calendars are full, but our souls are empty. How difficult is it even to take a week off and not deal with email and texts and all sorts of other things? We overdose on success, building a life that looks perfect on the outside while quietly falling apart on the inside. And we yell for help in silent ways. We overdose on entertainment, constantly consuming noise and distraction in order to avoid the quiet part inside where our pain lives. It's very painful, oftentimes, when we look inside. We overdose on politics, when our identity, our hope, and even our sense of righteousness gets tangled up in party lines or headlines, we stop seeing people and start defending sides. We become more concerned with winning a debate and being right rather than being in right relationship. We can even overdose on religion. We can have all the right words, all the right behaviors, and have no room for grace. All these things keep us from healing. They isolate us when we need the most help. They get us right to the door, and then we say no. We harden our hearts, and like a drug overdose, our bodies and our spirits start to shut down, and they keep us from receiving what only Jesus can give freely. But Jesus shows up, not with shame, but with mercy, not with a lecture, but with compassion, not to condemn, but to set us free and to heal. And he says 5 things. I see you. I hear you. You're not alone. There is hope. Let's go. In our gospel reading, there's a lot going on in this reading. And really, you have 3 main characters in this. There's Simon, who is the Pharisee. This is a man who, at least on the outside, has his act together. Looks like he's got it all together. He's successful. He has a house. And in that environment, in that society, you had to be doing decently in order to have a house. He's got reputation, a table, he's got the right theology, he's got it all together. But he can't see the woman. He can't see Jesus. He's overdosed. His eyesight, in a way, his spiritual eyesight is shutting down. He's overdosed on image, on judgment, on control, on order, on religiosity, and all of that. He's missed the most important thing. He's right there at the door, asking Jesus to come, but he doesn't want the help. Then there's the woman. She's vulnerable. She's broken. She's also brave. I think the most interesting part of the story is that she just invites herself in. She just walks right in. She is in need. She's at the door and doesn't wait for an invitation. She just goes to Jesus. She comes in with tears. She has no words. We don't hear a single word from this woman. There's no defense, no invitation, but Jesus sees her. The interesting thing about this woman, for so long it's been said, oh, she's a prostitute. We don't know that. It says that she was a sinner. Luke says she was a sinner. That's all we know. It doesn't matter what the sin is. Luke would have said what the sin is if the sin mattered. See, the problem that we have oftentimes is, like Simon, it's easy to scapegoat the Pharisees because that's a little too close. We don't want to be like Simon the Pharisee, so it's easy to, those Pharisees. Same thing Simon does with the woman. Oh, she's a sinner. Put distance between us. But she's a sinner, is what we're told. And she's not Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene was named specifically earlier in Luke, and she'll be named in Luke 8 as well, the very next chapter. So this is an unnamed woman who is a sinner. The beautiful thing about this story is that we are both Simon and the woman at the same time. Every single one of us. Oftentimes we have our acts together as much as we possibly can. We're able to do things. We also have a tendency, we're human beings, to judge, to see people in different ways. It's kind of natural human to look and make a judgment really quick. Simon isn't so terrible as much as he is human. That's who Simon is. That's who we are. And oftentimes we want to control Jesus. Simon had determined how Jesus would come and the invitation for when to come and where he would sit. Jesus doesn't play by those rules. Jesus decided that he would be Jesus. In spite of what Simon had going through his mind, he was talking to himself, and he said, oh, if this man was a prophet, he was thinking it to himself, and Jesus could hear his thoughts, essentially, know what his thoughts were. And Jesus sets Simon free from this as much as he sets the woman free. We're also the woman. And I know this very simply because in the beginning of the service, we did a prayer of confession. We're all sinners. I mentioned to somebody earlier that I would mention Martin Luther, because the Lutheran. Martin Luther had this phrase, and I'm Lutheran, so sorry, I'm going to have to do that. Martin Luther had this thing, he described sin as the turning inward on oneself. So what does that look like? It looks like this. It's a visual. It's staring into one's own belly button, if you want to think about it that way. That's what sin is. And when I do this, I can't see any of you, which means I am not in relationship with you, and I'm certainly not in relationship with God. We are sinner and saint at the same time. We are Simon and we are the woman at the same time. We overdose on religiosity, on being right, on having it look like we have it all together, and we are also the woman who, when we're honest with ourselves, it's all falling apart and we're scared and we have no words. There's a story that I think really kind of captures this. A story that one of the nurses told me, that a woman came into the clinic on a Monday, and she was one of the local women who work on the corner across the street. And she was scared. She came in, she looked around, and then she left. Too afraid to come in to ask for help. Just enough to get in the door, but not quite enough to ask for the help that she needed. She was concerned about what would happen to the other women that she was housed with. 2 days later, on that Wednesday, she came back to the clinic, and this time came in. And she was desperately in need of help. She came in, she sat down and asked for a nurse, and a nurse came over to her, and we have nursing students from HAC who also do a rotation through Christ Lutheran. And there was a nurse and there was a nursing student, and they were kneeling at her feet. The nursing student had yogurt, and she was literally feeding this woman some yogurt for some nutrition. The woman was in and out of consciousness, of coming off of some kind of drug that she was on to dull the pain of her existence. And she finally started to share her story. She shared the abuse, the pain, all sorts of things that went on in her life and her experience. They tried to keep her awake. They kept giving her food when she was awake. They give her compassion. They saw her. Not just the physical act of seeing, but they saw her humanity. In spite of all of the labels that were thrown on her, that society puts on her, they saw her and the pain that she had. They heard her. They heard her story. They heard her humanity. They heard her cry for help. And in seeing and in hearing, she knew that she was not alone. It is powerful to be seen and to be heard. It is life-giving to be seen and to be heard when you feel alone and silenced. And because she was not alone, she had hope. This nurse and the nursing student had given her hope that gave her the courage to say, I'm ready to get out. She couldn't do that on her own. She needed to make sure she was not alone and that there was a possibility of getting out. And in that moment when she said, I'm ready to get out, they lifted her up. They put her into the car of the nurse and took her to a location that deals and helps women who are trafficked to get her out, to set her free. They kept doing, I see you, I hear you, you're not alone, there's hope, let's go. You may never meet the people that you help. I almost said Christ Lutheran, sorry, I'm used to preaching in my context. Derry Presbyterian, you are an immense support to Christ Lutheran Church. You may never meet the people that you help, but your support sees them and it hears them. Your compassion, all the things that I heard in these announcements, you see and you hear people, whether it's with a physical act or it's through so many other ways. In a world where people feel invisible, unheard, unloved, your support makes a world of difference. And maybe today, it's not just about what you do for others, but maybe you need to hear this too. If you feel overwhelmed, Lord knows it's easy to feel overwhelmed in our world right now. We're inundated 24 hours a day with information that you cannot escape. You literally cannot escape it. Even if you turn off your phone or your television, you'll know what's going on. And if that's not overwhelming, I don't know what is. If you're hiding behind success or work, that's easy to do. If you're looking inside yourself and it frightens you to death, if you're struggling with who you are and what you believe and why, if you've built a life that looks good on the outside but you're dying on the inside, hear these words that Jesus has offered, not only to the woman, but to each one of us. I see you. I hear you. You're not alone. There is hope. Let's go. Thanks be to God.